This is Brooklyn St. Michael with the School of Aquaponics, and this is Ask the Aquaponics God, preventing you from becoming a biscuit-headed grower. Now today, we have a special episode from a gentleman who has a nice, fresh setup in his apartment, and it just pretty much wants to get an understanding on how to make this thing work. This is his first time putting it together an aquaponics system, and there's some issues that are being experienced, which is expected from people that are just getting started. Aquaponics is a very complex method of farming, and there's a fundamental principles that must be understood in order to get this thing to work correctly. So that's what we're going to touch on here. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Woo!
Hey Brooklyn, my name is Paul.
What's up, Paul? Woo!
First and foremost, thank you for doing this, for doing reviews of people's aquaponics systems. Personally, I wish I found your channel before I made all this, because probably I've made some biscuit-headed moves, and so hopefully through this video I can fix some of them. So here we go. So this is the system that I created. I have very little aquaponics experience, so all of this I just kind of created on my own. My personality is really just to start things and then figure out as I go, which is probably not the way it should be, but it is what it is.
Absolutely. That is something that you do not want to continue as a habit with aquaponics. Doing that, building and going with the flow before doing the proper calculations and knowing what you're doing will cost you tons of money. Trust me, I know from experience. I've lost tens of thousands of dollars doing it that way. I'm going to get out there and build it and just put it together and then find out how it works afterwards. Tens of thousands of dollars with that. So we want to make sure that we do the right things first, have a plan first, a blueprint set up, and then go out and start building, make sure that we do everything correctly. But at least you acknowledge it. So I must give you that.
So here we go. I just had a few questions as we go. I'll just ask you them. So first thing I did was buy this tank. Knew that I didn't want the water levels to keep going up and down, and so I guess I created a sump tank. I think that's what this side is called, where I split it with a acrylic pane, and I used food grade silicone to tighten all that, to make it watertight. It seems to work. I'll just have it on. I'll just turn it on so that you can see the system kind of work. So right now the water is obviously coming through that pump. It's going all the way up to the first level. Here we go, and it's pumping into here. It fills to the top, exits down into the second level, same thing. I have the exit, which is that, and it's attached to this, I guess, valve, which I adjust it to flow very slowly, so this will fill up. So this will fill up and then exit out, and it exits back into the tank. And so this is the overflow from the exit. So it all exits into here, overflows into the sump, and it continues the cycle.
So you have a smooth setup. This is a smooth setup, basic setup. There's a few adjustments that I will make. They're probably a little bit more advanced, but overall it's a smooth setup. I see exactly how it works. I like your sump idea. It looks like that's been taken from the aquarium hobby practice. But it does work though. Your sump, I see the way that you have it set up. It does absolutely work, and I don't see anything wrong with that for the most part.
Okay, and so it's filling up. Water level is about there. It's gonna start filling into here soon. Oh, there it goes. It's filling in, and so the cycle will go. Yeah, I just wanted to see if it will work. And so I just put in some seeds that I had, and that's what came up, the stuff up there. We'll get to that when we get there. But My first question was, there's a lot of fish poop on the floor of this gravel, and I did purchase a filter, if you see that thing right there. It's apparently a biological, chemical, and I forgot what the other one was, physical maybe. And it's picking up some of the poop, but not all of it. I don't even know if I should have that. I only got it because I didn't want the fish poop going into the sump, going up there, and then, staying in the bottom of that. So I just purchased that like 2 days ago, which is probably biscuit headed move since I don't know if I needed it. So anyways, that's my first question. Do I need it? Do I need this? Should I find another way of filtering? Do I need to worry about the poop on the floor? Should I clean that? I've been looking up like gravel vacuums and like stuff like that. If it gets inside the sump, or if it gets inside the pump, will it matter if it goes up there? That's my first question.
So there's a few things that we need to touch on here. There's a few things that I want to hit on in each one of your points that you made. So first of all, you bought the filter. That filter right there is designed to remove the suspended solids, the solids that are kind of floating up, and it may suck up some of the ones from the bottom, but it's primarily made to remove the suspended solids that are floating in the water column, and then remove those out of the system. But do you need that filter? Absolutely not. Not for the setup that you have. See, you have a gravel or a media bed system. You have one of these type of systems. So the media is supposed to function as your filter, your biological filter and your solids filter, both in one. So adding this in here, it just pretty much, it's not really doing anything. I mean, you're removing extra solids out of the system, but that's something that's unnecessary. You really want to keep those solids in that media bed because that is pretty much the function of that system. So right here, you bought that filter. This is what I say. You have to know a lot of things before putting stuff together, because these little, buying these little gadgets and stuff, this stuff adds up quickly over time. Aquaponics is not a cheap hobby. It's not a cheap hobby. So things like this, they will keep adding up. And this is a small system, obviously, but if you keep doing this over time, next thing you know, you're spending $500, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, and it just keeps going, adding, and you just find out at the end is, you didn't need it. So you do not need that filter there. You need to remove all that gravel from the bottom. You do need to get rid of those solids, but it's going to make it much more difficult if you have all that gravel and stuff. I mean, your setup's hot. I'm not going to lie. It's a nice looking setup for an aquarium hobby. Aquaponics, we can't do this stuff. That's why I keep telling people we cannot be looking fancy and expect a good production. It just does not work that way. Aquarium, absolutely. I like it, man. I was looking at it like, man, I might have to set me up one of these things. How you have it. I like how your stuff is, all tropical and everything, but in aquaponics, you're going to need to remove that stuff out of the way. And if you keep the gravel in there, you're going to have to be in there with the vacuum, sucking out poop all day. You're going to be a maintenance man, aquaponics maintenance man, and that's what I'm trying to prevent you guys from doing. I don't want people to be a maintenance man. I want you to be an effective grower so you can produce food and not sitting here doing it, just to look good. And I don't think that's what you're doing. I think you're honestly trying to figure it out. But a lot of people are caught up in doing this, trying to look good instead of growing food. So we want to remove all that gravel out of the way. And what you should do is you want that stuff to go into your sump tank. You want the solids to remove into the sump tank and then get sucked up to your pump. So what you should look into doing is you may have to reconfigure this setup, or you might be able to find a way to do it, but you really should look into setting up a solids lifting overflow. You might have to drill the glass where you have in between where the sump is at. You might have to drill that if you have the non-tempered glass. You might have to drill that and put a solids lifting overflow in there, which you can just build out of PVC, connect it to there, and that'll suck up all the solids from the bottom, and it'll get the suspended solids out of the water column as well, and bring it over to the pump, where the pump will suck those solids up and bring them up into the media bed, which is where you want those to settle there. That is the purpose of doing this, because if you're going to remove the solids out, there's no point of doing a media bed. It's just really not. It's just really no point of doing it. So you want them to settle up there. From there, they will eventually break down. They will be mineralized, and they will release nutrients from which your plants can use. So this is your filtration process right here, and it helps input more nutrients into the system. So that's what we're looking to do with this type of setup here. You don't want to remove them out of the system before they make it to the media bed. So that's what I would suggest doing. So yeah, let's continue looking.
Second question is, this I have on a timer to go on at 4 o'clock in the morning because I don't like the sound of it when it's exiting. It makes like a vortex sound and it's kind of loud. So if you have any suggestions for how to stop that from happening, do I need to do this do I need to cycle the water more than once a day? Probably I do, but I don't know how that works.
Okay, so let's start with the sound that it's making, with the vortex sound. That's when it's siphoning. To be honest, I don't know any tips or tricks to use to cause that to stop making that sound. I'm pretty sure there probably is somebody out here who's figured something out, but that is the part of the natural process of a siphoning. You're gonna hear that draining and that draining sound as it begins to drain all the way out. That's just something that just comes with it. Maybe somebody has figured it out, but that's pretty much what you can expect to hear. I like to hear it. Because I need to know my stuff is working. But I understand that you don't want to hear it all in your house. So I'm not sure. You might have to do a little bit of extra research to find out if there's a way to do that. But as far as I know now, it's just a natural part of it, and I don't know any other way to stop it or reduce the noise from happening. Now, do you need to cycle this system more than once every 24 hours? Absolutely yes. You absolutely need to do that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to do that if you want to have effective nitrification occurring in your system. You have the ammonia building up in your fish tank from your fish. They're excreting it out, and from fish feed. That is staying in there, and it will eventually begin to accumulate rapidly in there. So you need to cycle, have that the water replenish, and that's what your media balls are for. That's where they house nitrifying bacteria that's going to oxidize and convert that ammonia into the less toxic forms of nitrogen. So you do need to do it more often. If you just have it sitting there all day, it's going to accumulate, and you're not going to be able to have efficient colonization of your nitrifying bacteria. So you need to have it continuously going, or going more often, much more often than that. Much more often than that. I don't know any rule of thumb that I would give you right now, but it needs to be much more off, because I always keep mine running continuously. But for a media bed, maybe you would look for something maybe like 15 minutes on, 45 minutes off, half an hour on, half an hour off. It needs to be something that is more consistent. Something around there is what I would aim for. But you need to have those nitrifying colonies, the bacteria is developing. They need to have access to that ammonia, that water that's filled with ammonia. They need to have that. They need to have it so they can convert, they can use that as energy, and they can begin to develop more colonies. And then eventually you won't have an ammonia problem, because you'll have it cycling more often, or often enough to where once it cycles through and enough times, it'll be consumed and oxidized, and then you won't have an ammonia problem. But if you keep doing it this way, you will have an ammonia problem that will be continuously there. So absolutely, let's do it way more often than that. Way more often than that. That's not going to last long. Your ammonia levels, you will see that they will begin to spike very rapidly, and they will not drop down, because it's just not enough. There's not enough exposure to the bacteria. Woo!
I didn't know about ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, so I did not cycle that, because I only found out that after I made all this. And so this is a fish cycle, I guess. I'm okay with, I guess, them being the sacrifice. I don't want them to be sacrificed, but if that's what I need to do, then that is what it is.
This man Paul said sacrifice. Hey, they don't have to be a sacrifice, man. You just expecting them to die. Listen, they don't have to be a sacrifice. Just make sure you have a low feeding rate. Feed them very low. Check your ammonia every single day. Feed them low amounts. And then make sure you have that water cycling more often, and they will not be a sacrifice. You can definitely have them survive with a fish cycle. I do it all the time. That's the only way I do it, is with a fish cycle. You just have to make sure you're checking and monitoring every day and respecting the course of nature. That's pretty much what it is, and you will not have sacrificial fish.
I do have the water testing thing up there. I should have tested it first before doing this video. But the ammonia levels, last time I checked it, wasn't too high. It was at like 0.2, I think, or whatever not the first yellow, but this one after that. It's like in between those. There's no nitrites, no nitrates yet. It's still, I guess, forming. I only started this about 2 weeks ago. I only got the fish about a week ago. And so it's doing a full cycle now of water. It's trickling over, the sump, and it's going there, and it's continuing. This is a full cycle, and so that's number one. How often do I feed them? I know that there's like a formula. I don't know how to figure out that formula. I've been feeding them flakes, golden, whatever this is, flakes, like pretty often, maybe like 3 or 4 times a day, maybe like a pinch. Yeah, that's one thing.
So that is about correct. I typically feed, well, it depends on the stage of the fish, but the fish that you're using here aren't the typical fish for aquaponics. If they're small fish, like fingerlings like this for tilapia, it would be upwards of 8 times a day for the smaller fish, but they wouldn't be in my main system. That would be in a separate system, a nursery system, where they're growing out. And then eventually, as they get to the main system, then it would be around 3 to 4 times a day. Now, how much you feed them, this all boils down to having a correctly balanced system, but it would be around 1 to 2% of their body weight. If you're using, the traditional type of fish, that's what it would be. These fish right here, what are these, goldfish? Oh, maybe you can use these. These are goldfish here. Yeah, so it would be pretty much the same. I think these are goldfish. If these are goldfish, yes, then you can expect pretty much the same thing then. I had to take a second look at it. Yeah, pretty much the same. As they begin to grow out, right now you're feeding them 4 times. That's probably a bit too much starting out because you have them in your main system here, and that ammonia is going to pretty much build up very rapidly. I would not push it any further than that until your system is fully cycled and you have your nitrification all the way going, and it's pretty much mature. But eventually, yeah, 3 to 4 times a day. That sounds about right. 1 to 2% body weight for a media bed system. It's a different way of feeding. The stocking density is different for this setup. The feeding rate is different for this setup than it is for like a deep water culture system or a NFT system or one of those type of systems, because the solids remain in the system in a media bed. So you have to feed differently. You have to be more wise, and the stocking density cannot be as dense as the other systems. So that's another thing. I'm gonna leave a link. Here so you guys can find out. Dr. Wilson Leonard, where he put the calculations together for media bed system. These things are great for hobby home systems like that, hobby type of production. And he has a calculations a thing where you can input all your calculations, and it'll tell you the size of your tank that you need, your plant production area. It'll tell you all of that stuff, and then you can model your systems after that. So if you do it that way, it's a chance you might have to remodel your system, because I'm pretty sure it may not be balanced correctly. But that's just something that you have to decide if you want to do. But I'm gonna leave a link for where you can find this calculator at, and then hopefully you guys put it to use and not just get out there and wing things and just try to go on the fly. I want to make sure I want to save you guys headache, so I'll put that in there for you, and for everyone else that's watching as well.
I'm using T5 24 watt 6500K lights. Is this a good light? I just googled it and that's what came up.
T5s are great lights. They're great lights for indoor production. So you won't go wrong with T5s.
These are my plants. I had cucumber plant seeds and cantaloupe seeds, and then those are just like leftover scallions that I had, and I'm doing some basil over there. But I started seeing some browning on this cucumber plant. I googled it, and the first thing I saw was like magnesium deficiency, and so they're like, use Epsom salt, but I don't know about that either. I don't know if it'll hurt the fish, and so
no, Epsom salt does not hurt the fish. It is a great magnesium supplement for some people who have systems that are lacking magnesium, but that deficiency there, it is caused because it's an imbalance in the system. It is an imbalance in the system, and it's obviously it's lacking nutrients. So you don't have enough feed in there to supply these plants. So that's just what it is. Aquaponics relies on a balance. You have to have the right amount of feed in there to supply the nutrient demand of the plants. And that requires you to understand the proper fundamentals of aquaponics. That's for anyone out there. Or you will have these deficiencies all the time. You will be battling this out all the time. This is exactly where I started, and this is not anything foreign. It's exactly how I started and exactly the problems that I had. You have to get a schedule going where you have things that are like your if you have a magnesium problem, you have to have that dosed on a schedule. Your potassium, your calcium, these things need to be dosed on a schedule in order to prevent this from occurring. And another thing, my man Paul, I see you got the cantaloupes in there. You got the tomatoes in there. I'm going to tell you right now that this system here is not going to grow those. You're not going to be able to grow those, Paul. They require a significant amount of growing space. And this here is not going to provide that. This system here would be more suitable for like herbs and small leafy greens, your lettuce, maybe some, spinach, maybe some kale in there. But tomatoes and cantaloupe and all that is not going to work in this, and not even close. So I want to let you know that right now, so you don't expect to have much success growing those. I just want to let you know. Your basil, you can get some good growth out of that, but the other ones is just not going to happen.
There's a lot of stuff that I need help in, so if you can, and then this is the second level. I didn't put any plants in there yet, but if I needed to, I want to grow like tomatoes and peppers, and I just want to make this into a system that works in New York City. I'm in Bayside, New York, and this is the space that I have in my house. And so any tips, hints, help will be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much once again, Brooklyn, for doing what you do. I look forward to hearing your response.
So, Paul, you're definitely on the right track. You just need some tweaking and a little bit of information, just to solve some of the problems that are there. Because these small problems lead to big problems in the future. If you try to expand and do things like that, it will cost you money if you don't do it right. Go get that calculator. Go click on that link with the calculator for your media bed system, and go input some numbers in there and find out exactly what size of a system you need, because all this is important. If you don't build the system correctly in the beginning, the chances of you having effective growth after that is very slim. It's going to be very, very difficult. You have to have a proper balance from the beginning. From the beginning, when you set it up, and everything has to be functioning pretty much the right way. Or if you want to get really good production with aquaponics, it's a game that we have to respect. Everyone must respect the course of nature and the way that it's designed. If this was an hydroponic setup, you would have zero problems because you can create the balance on your own. You're not really worried about the fish and all these things that come into play. You can just add your chemicals in there however much you want, and you can balance it out that way. But that's not the case for aquaponics. You can't really mix a lot of the hobby things in there, even with the aquarium stuff. It just will not be effective if you want to grow. Effectively with aquaponics. So go check the calculator out, look at some of that stuff in there, and just make some of the adjustments that I recommended. Make sure you have your timer running more often than once a day. It's going to have that more than once a day if you want you want effective growth, and you want your system to not be pretty much poisonous to the fish. You don't want ammonia just sitting around, lingering around, waiting for a whole day before it's cycled and before it is in contact with the nitrifying bacteria. Look into the solids lifting overflow, like I told you again, so you can remove those solids from the bottom and from the within the water column. Remove the gravel. The gravel is going to have to go. You can use this aquarium tank. These work fine for aquaponics. You just have to have it set up properly for that. Your sump tank, I don't see a problem with the sump tank. You can keep that like that. I actually like that little idea like that. I think it's a pretty unique idea. That right there is a good crossover from the aquarium hobby practice to aquaponics. I like that. We probably have to see how it works in the long run, but from right now, it looks like it's working pretty well. Remove the gravel, get all those solids removed up, keep them in the system. You will have to do periodic maintenance on your gravel or your hydrogen clay pebbles that you have in there. You will have to periodically go in there, stir up the solids to prevent anaerobic areas from occurring in there, which are areas with little to no oxygen in there. So you have to go in there and stir that up. It will require some manual maintenance, but that's just part of doing this type of system. But everything else, man, is looking fine. The way you have it pretty much built up, we just need to make sure that everything else is based off of the fundamentals and that you're following the guidelines. And I don't see any problem with that. Get those tomatoes out of here. Get those cantaloupes out of here. Get those peppers, hot peppers, jalapeno peppers, whatever type of peppers, those going to have to go. Unless you have some midget peppers. If you have midget peppers that grow like this tall, that's the only thing that's going to work. Those peppers, they require way too much room. So get some leafy greens in there. If you have a magnesium problem, get it on a schedule, because you probably in that feed that you have, you're probably not going to have any magnesium. Probably going to have to get you a better feed source in the future. That probably doesn't have anything that has to do with magnesium in that one. Maybe it does. I don't know. But you're going to have to put more feed in there. And it's going to take a little time, man, to get used to it. Take a little time, build up some confidence, and then just keep watching. And hopefully that will help you out, Paul. Hopefully that this video has helped you out somewhat. And for anyone else out there that's watching, anyone else has your videos, Brooklyn at the School of Aquaponics.com. This is Brooklyn St. Michael with the School of Aquaponics. Paul, I want to appreciate you again for sending your video. Everyone else, woo!